Running the world's largest MMA organization is no small task, I imagine, and far be it from me to tell the UFC how to run their business. That being said, there's no harm in some constructive criticism, so as 2019 comes to a close, for SB Nation MMA, I'm Shaquille Majuri, and here are 5 New Year's resolutions for the UFC in 2020. Number 5. Let's start with a personal gripe, the UFC Rankings. The UFC teamed up with Fight Metric back in 2013 when their plan for a rankings panel was first pitched. 90 media members from around the world were supposed to contribute. They only got around 50, and that number dropped to just 14 2 years later. Nico28 has a brilliant breakdown on Reddit, well worth checking out. For anyone who has ever wondered why the rankings seem like total nonsense, it's because almost half of the people contributing to it have no experience working in MMA. I get the sense that the UFC's relationship with the media has improved in 2019, so please, let's revisit the official rankings in 2020 and come up with a more definitive system. Number 4. The fighters at the top of the bill are making decent money in MMA, but it's still nowhere close to other major sports like boxing or the NBA. At UFC 245, Punahele Soriano made $10K to show and $10K to win. Had he lost that fight, he likely would have lost money on his training camp. Let me be clear, no one fighting at any level, especially at the pinnacle of the sport, should be losing money when they step out of the cage. And that is not to mention any potential wages lost from taking time off day jobs, which many fighters still have. When the UFC signed a long-term fixed deal with ESPN for their pay-per-view and televised events, the promotion took leverage away from the fighters. The UFC gets a flat, guaranteed sum of money per event, so they're less pressured than ever to exchange more money for star power. Now, I'm not saying the UFC is looking to put on intentionally bad cards, but the ball is definitely in their court. NBA players receive roughly 50% of league revenue, and I think it's time fighters from top to bottom get a share of the TV and pay-per-view earnings. Number 3. I'm sure Dana White is pounding his head against asphalt over the demand for a 165-pound division. Fighters want it, fans want it, and the media wants it. So why not? Lightweight and welterweight are arguably 2 of the most stacked divisions in all of MMA. We have seen some of the sport's biggest stars like Conor McGregor, Jorge Masvidal, and Nate Diaz shift between divisions. Even Georges St-Pierre has flirted with the idea. Both divisions are bloated, and a new weight class would offer fresh matchups and the chance to create more stars in the division. It's strange to think the UFC is so desperately holding on to women's featherweight despite its lack of depth, but are unwilling to even out 2 of their more cluttered weight classes. Plus, it's one more champion to create super fights with, and we all know how much the UFC loves their champ versus champ fights. Number 2. Staying on the topic of weight classes, it would be great to see some more short-notice catchweight fights in the UFC. I admit there are inherent problems with catchweight fights. Primarily, it creates confusion around rankings and may put an asterisk on wins. As we have already established, however, the rankings are in dire need of a tune-up anyway. Major promotions have put a renewed emphasis on weight cutting, from UFC's early weigh-ins to ONE Championship's revised weight classes. We can debate the effectiveness of these models, but they are at least being considered. To that end, it would be great if short-notice replacements didn't have to cut extreme amounts of weight so fast. They are already stepping up to save a matchup, potentially a whole card, so why risk their health and performance? And number 1. I feel kinda silly having to say this out loud, but UFC, let's please stop collaborating with dictators, eh? Kareem Zidane over at Bloody Elbow has written numerous pieces about the UFC's ambivalence toward Chechen dictator Ramzan Kadyrov. Kadyrov was spotted cage-side at UFC 242, and while the UFC may not be looking to shout the close athlete relationships Kadyrov has with some of their stars to the world, they're still willing to allow him to use their platform for self-promotion. For the uninitiated, Kadyrov has been heavily shunned for a vast array of human rights violations, including forced disappearances, torture, and the purge of gay people in mass detention camps. It's unclear if the dictator has had any hand in the UFC's expansion into Russia, but he runs Ahmed Fight Club, which has produced past and present UFC fighters like Magomed Bibulatov, Abdul Karim Edilov, Magmed Ankalaev, and has even served as a training base for champion Fabricio Verdum. More recently, Kadyrov has developed a friendship with UFC lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov. I typically like to reserve judgment until I meet people myself, but I feel like I can confidently say Kadyrov is not a nice guy. I also wouldn't be surprised if I'm on some sort of hit list for pointing out the obvious. I love the UFC. Can we please stop this nonsense? There you have it, 5 New Year's resolutions for the UFC in 2020. What else do you think the UFC should work on in the new year? Let us know in the comments section below, and if you like this video, please hit like, subscribe, and tap that notification bell for more MMA goodness just like this.